Eigen. Welcome back to another episode of Coordinated. Today we have a zkTLS protocol with Opacity. They are one of the most favorite protocols of Shriram, the entire Eigen team for obvious reasons. If you're keeping close eye on EigenCloud and crypto in general, you will see zkTLS in narratives. Why? The reason? Because it's actually solving use cases. Mainly, in crypto, we all know it's mostly about airdrops, narratives, speculation, pump and dumps, casinos and all. Although these are fine, these are nice and good, but this doesn't solve kind of real problems. These are very good acquisition mechanisms, but these are not good retention mechanisms to actually impact real people's lives. zkTLS with the help of EigenCloud, it has managed to solve lots of use cases. Reclaim is the other protocol. We interviewed their founder 1 month back. I think that episode is out. Don't forget to check that out. It has actually answered a lot of questions from zkTLS. But this episode with Opacity and their head of marketing, David, is also a very nice one. We mostly jammed on the non-dev side of zkTLS. What's actually zkTLS from a non-dev perspective? What is Opacity? The various clients of Opacity. Earnify, I'm sure you have seen this app across city and across various, it's the chart topper in the App Store in US. So pretty great things on that. We also discussed how devs can get started with Opacity. And yeah, David being a GTM king, he also advised us how we can position our podcast better. I hope you will have a banger listening this. As always, let us know in the comments. What do you think about it? Are you get started with zkTLS? Yep, see you in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Coordinated. Today we have a very special episode with one of the most hyped up space. If you're following Eigen layer and Sriram Kannan and all the Eigen, now I think I shouldn't say Eigen layer, it's now reverted to EigenCloud. So it's like if you're keeping up with all the EigenCloud updates, Sriram, Nader, even with Coordinated, you must seen one very specific niche we all are focusing about is zkTLS. This particular thing or this particular innovation of ZK and the traditional rep to TLS unlocks a lot of space, unlocks a lot of new use cases. It has real PMFs, many very real apps you can see using this niche and building on it. One app, which is, I just want to highlight this in the very beginning and David can take it from there. That's Earnify. It's one of the champ app out there. It's like top finance app in US. I guess many of you who are hearing or seeing this podcast have used it. I think many people even don't know it has a crypto narrative or a crypto tech behind it. Opacity and EigenLayer, they mutually powers this. So you can actually see this is not just a crypto native thing or just a pump and dump thing, how crypto is widely known as. This space has really PMF. David from Opacity joined us today. As I mentioned, Opacity is a based zkTLS protocol using Eigen Rails. Hey David, super thanks for doing this. I know we are going back and forth for a long time to get this thing done, but I think finally we are here. Super thanks to host you.
Yeah, excited to be here. We were talking before. I feel like when we first started talking, it was a cool idea. Like people were just starting to understand, and now all the chains are jumping on. I think literally today there's a zkTLS day going on with Monad with some of the guys that are all going to be in from the ecosystem, not just us. So it's shifted a lot since we first connected way back in the day when I first started at Opacity. But yeah, very happy to be here.
Awesome. I think as David, you mentioning, I think zkTLS is going to be a very hot narrative. I think each CC followed by all the big conferences or Dev Connect, which is going to come later in this year. I'm sure there will be dedicated events to this zkTLS thing, not even ZK. So we are, gauging the depth and importance of zkTLS in our entire space. Before jumping into zkTLS, what it is, how Opacity is solving problems using zkTLS, we'd like to know a little bit about you, David. How you came into crypto, what are the things you used to do prior to that, and how you came across Opacity, how you met Harsh, and how Opacity happened.
Yeah, for sure. So I spent most of my career actually in traditional finance on the sort of sales fundraising side. It's definitely a place where I cut my teeth. It's not an easy place to work, but I think I developed a pretty strong skill set there. And now I sort of have the ability to straddle both worlds, which I think is helpful. But I originally got into crypto in 2017. I was working at a finance job after I had sort of made my way through the big names and made my way down to boutique. And I sort of told myself at that job, if this one's not it, it was a small team, it was supposed to be, fast moving, then finance probably isn't for me. And the long story short is it definitely wasn't for me. I think there's a lot of power behind finance to helping people get access to capital, and a lot of good things come from it. But the lack of innovation was really killing me. So as Fred Wilson posted a talk from Vitalik, and I said, that's it. This is the future. Much like Hirsch and many others, I sold my Ethereum much too early, but it's okay. The good news is there's always new opportunities showing up in a space like this. So back then there wasn't a lot to do for a sales guy in crypto. So I just sort of followed it, invested some money and followed it while I looked for other things to do. I did some things in the health tech space. I spent some time starting a CPG company with my wife. So I guess technically I'm an ex-founder, although I really don't see it in the same way. But it was around 2021 where I was still looking for the thing that really caught my eye. And my friends were like, dude, it's crypto. It's always been crypto for you. It's the thing that you love. And now they pay regular salaries. You can get paid in US dollars and not just wait for ICOs and hope you make money that way. So got started with a Polkadot project at first, spent a couple of years there running their go-to-market. Was a really good learning experience, but it was sort of
interrupting you. Polkadot means the main Polkadot protocol or some other projects on the protocol?
Oh no, it was a parachain, and actually, ironically enough, after I left, they ended up moving over to EigenLayer. So they've had their own journey over towards this narrative as well. But after that, got involved with Farcaster, spent a little bit of time at a company called Airstack, and actually met Hirsch through Farcaster, right when he was sort of starting his Opacity journey. And I didn't know this at the time, but he sort of had his eye on me for my activity there.
I think you have a pretty big following in Farcaster. I think I forgot the numbers, but it's pretty big for a Farcaster account or a space so big.
Yeah, I suppose being early health, I'm around 50K right now, I think. So it's good. I don't post there as much as I'd like to anymore. And now that I'm busy with Opacity, but yeah, I still love the Farcaster ecosystem, which is also how I found the Airstack job. But things didn't work out there, and I was really just taking my time for the next role. I had, sort of jammed myself straight into crypto, and then right into Farcaster, then a Farcaster adjacent thing. And I sort of took a moment. I said, let's think back from first principles. What do I want to do? I want to work for a place that I think has technology that can really revolutionize the world. I want to work with people that I really trust, and also people that really trust me. So I ended up consulting for Opacity before they closed their fundraise, just for a month, getting their positioning in order, getting their messaging in order, things that'll be helpful no matter what, and really got along with the team well. So officially joined Opacity in August, and it's been a rocket ship since then, just trying to constantly keep up with the pace of growth. But it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, that's sort of my background and how I got here today.
Awesome. I think one thing you were highlighting, before the talk also now, from when we started talking, I think 3-4 months back at least until now, a lot of things changed. And since the time you joined, last year August, I'm assuming last year August you joined Opacity. It's almost a year now. So for a zkTLS protocol, lots of things changed. I think I just heard the term. I'm in crypto for 4 years now, but last year I just heard a term. Okay, a thing like zkTLS exists. ZK is a huge umbrella. You hear proofs, verification, and all these other things. But as we are talking, zkTLS has become such an important thing now. How you saw the change, because you are a contributor who is seeing things very first hand close, how it's changing. But if you can kindly take us through it, both for Opacity and both for the zkTLS space, how it has changed from the time you joined, actually the past 1 year, and what's the tipping point where it kind of bursted and it kind of become mainstream amongst the CT people?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think, I'll speak from Opacity side first, and then maybe zkTLS broadly afterwards. But for me, when I first joined, a lot of what I was working on was just validation that the idea was useful. We were still very much in that phase. There's a couple people that had signed on that had unlocked value, but was it broader than that? 2 people is not a sample, right? 3 people is not a sample. So we had these good ideas. Things about killing the cold start problem, vampire attacks, and Hirsch, our founder, very frequently says that he actually gets all the ideas wrong about what what's like the incredible thing that you can build. So the thing that I noticed that's really special, at least, and I say this all the time, but to anyone who hasn't heard me talk before, it's when like someone, a builder or founder with a really deep understanding of some business problem, sees zkTLS as the unlock. I think this is the correct way to approach problems, right? So you start at sort of first principles about what you're trying to do, and then you grab the tools and the middleware, whatever it may be. And we recently had the Finality guys on our own podcast, and we were talking about this as well. That was the big unlock for me, at least when I was at Opacity, when I started understanding how to, pitch this and talk to people who are, clearly crack teams building incredible stuff, but like understanding how this is the big unlock they've been waiting for. Either they haven't founded the company because there's no way to do it without zkTLS, or they're struggling to find PMF because it's hard to get this data from users. Everyone sort of knows, like, whether it's like because you've worked at a tech company before and you see the value of the data, or you just like look at the fucking stock market. Like, they're all based off owning your data, right? Like Facebook, Google, they're all just making money off owning people's data, right? So we know there's value there, but figuring out how to unlock it with the portability was really the major thing. So we've seen huge adoption from like, apps that are going viral, like Earnify. EarnOS is another great one. Just had KYD announce recently a partnership, and a few more. We're doing great. And I think the sort of tail end of this journey for Opacity, at least today, not tail end totally, but where we're at now is we're starting to see people who are sort of Web 2 builders, but crypto aware, that are really getting excited about this, where they're just trying to build a great product. And because they want to build a great product, they have to build it in Web 2 today. There's just too much UX friction otherwise. But then they find Opacity and they're like, okay, EigenLayer, cool. It is what it is, right? Opacity, cool. It is what it is. What people care about is this data portability and verifiability. And that's getting people excited. So I think that's what happened with Opacity, and really excited to see that journey continue. On the zkTLS side, if I'm being honest, I talked to the EigenLayer guys about this a lot, and I always sort of say crypto has no fucking users. Like, like relatively speaking, right? Like, we all get very excited about things, and I do think the tech is like world changing. But if you look at, the numbers of a middling sort of social app, not even like a top tier one, it's orders of magnitude more than like the Bitcoin holders, right? Which is still the number one like old address holders, right? I mean, sure, maybe you could throw in some centralized exchange numbers and stuff to boost it up a little bit, but again, orders of magnitude, right? And forget about Facebook, WhatsApp, Instacart, any of these other major Web2 services. We're just not close yet. So when you started to see apps like Earnify, apps like EarnOS, apps like Daisy is another one of our partners that I love. That's a TikTok influencer program. Not only getting users, but actually generating revenue because they're creating great products. I think that got people really, really excited. And being able to tell that story to a crypto native audience who has been, I think there's fatigue. I think there's fatigue around airdrops. There's fatigue around, farming. There's fatigue around a bunch of people doing stuff, not because they love it, but just because they think they can make money off of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with making money. I think it's wonderful, but I think people get confused when they think they have users who love their product and actually they're just giving away free money, right? So when we were able to tell a story that this is crypto technology, it doesn't require wallets, it doesn't require gas, there is no airdrop, but you're still going to love it. And so your friends are going to love it too, even if they don't care about the price of Bitcoin. That got people really excited. And I think that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah, I think that's the, great point you have highlighted. I think, as I was mentioning, at the start of the podcast, I think prior to things like zkTLS, crypto is more about speculation, like how the price of Bitcoin going up, Ethereum going up. Many came for airdrops, many came for, primarily, things of finance, or primarily think of, getting something out of it. And these are never your users. These are always farmers. And although I also write, good amount of time in Twitter about projects and all, but yeah, Kaito is good and fine, but again, it's most, people gaming the system and all these things and getting drops and all these things. With zkTLS, with Opacity, these things are changing. And as you are telling, I think we haven't discussed in depth till now, till the 10 minutes of the podcast, that what is zkTLS, what is Opacity. But the viewers and listeners of the podcast, one thing they have, understood that this is a thing which actually built from fundamentals of crypto. And it can actually bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. And real builders, they can get facility from this piece of tech to solve real problems. I think I'll now directly come to, asking that question, what is opacity? Like, what is opacity if you define, and what is zkTLS? You can, start with a very basic analogy. Like, think this is like 5-year-olds are hearing this podcast, including me. And then you can go gradually depth as much as you want us to take.
Yeah, for sure. So I prefer to keep things simple because I'm not a developer and I'm the go-to-market guy. So if a 5-year-old can't understand it, then I'm not doing my job explaining. But what zkTLS does really at its core is it lets people verify their data and share it. Right? It creates data portability across the internet. It seems very basic, and it should be very basic. But the way the internet was built a long time ago, it basically didn't allow for it. So the ZK part really just means you can redact and choose what you share. Ultimately, the big unlock here is that you can take your data from one platform and share it with someone else. So in some senses, it is a crypto company. Right? We use EigenLayer for economic security. There's, multi-party compute involved and other big words that, to be blunt, I don't think matter to a 5-year-old. And to be blunt, I don't think matter to most developers either if they're trying to build a great product. Not that it's not interesting. It's just not the point, right? At the end of the day, this allows you to understand your user behavior better. So with all that being said, what's the superpower, right? The superpower here is two things. And I've updated my framing on this since even we first started talking. Said, so you're getting the better version of me now than if we had gotten it out later. But the two superpowers, as I see it with zkTLS, are one, you can now layer economics on top of data, which normally you could only do on the blockchain. If you wonder why DeFi has exploded, it's because it's the only place you can layer on economics directly to the data. Because everyone can come to consensus and say that, yes, this is verifiably true. I know you own this Bitcoin, so I can assign a monetary value to that. Versus in the Web 2 world, you cannot say, I own this account, I own this follower. It's not really possible. So yes, manual transaction, things like that can happen, but we can't really move these things around. So that's one thing. The second thing is what I call like user level composability. Because a user can prove that they own one set of data, they can also prove that they own another set of data. Now we have this richer data set around an individual that's much more powerful than the sum of its parts. And there's a lot of examples of this, but one classic one that I have is, you go to Airbnb and you hand out ratings and they say, okay, cool. Those are ratings. That's good. That's what we have today. It'd be a lot nicer if I knew if any of my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram friends also stayed there, or if they had eaten at a restaurant and left a Yelp review, right? It's important to know that maybe someone has $10,000 in the bank account, but you'd also like to know what their credit score is, or if they, have an Amex Black Card, whatever it may be, right? So this congregation of data is extremely valuable for a number of different use cases. Some of them we talked about. I think it's going to be really powerful for AI in the future. And yeah, that's sort of zkTLS. I'll pause there. I can talk more about opacity, but I feel like I'm yapping a lot on this one. So if there's anything you think that I should dig into more for your audience, I'm going to assume they know some stuff, but you know best if they want to talk about that more, if we should dig into the opacity framing and sort of what we do specifically.
Yeah, I think that will be the really the next step of thing. I think what we got about zkTLS, it's kind of a internet portal, which is connecting various points, and it is creating a place where the data migrates, and then breaking things as much as possible. Is it what zkTLS is in a simple terms?
Yeah. It's this notary process of verification, right? So I think it's really important because I think a lot of people compare us to like a Plaid or something where someone sort of stores your data somewhere else and then pushes it around for you. Because the user's in control, Opacity can't get hacked for your password. But we don't have it, right? We can't leak your personal information. We don't have it. All we're doing is verifying that you have something and then you share with who you want to. Now, listen, there are people out there who are like, oh, that means no data can get hacked ever again. No, when you share your data with someone else, you choose to do it. That's your risk. And I think that's a good thing that people are able to, choose who they share their data with, but you are sharing your data and there's, consequences around that. So I encourage people to think pretty deeply about, who you want to share your data with and what you want to share. Because, we're entering a new era of the internet where, it's not locked up in walled gardens anymore, which is great. There's a huge value unlock, but there's always risk associated with unlocks, right? So that's a key difference that I always like to highlight as well.
What I understood about zkTLS, David, correct me if I'm wrong, that let's say there is a platform, Airbnb, I'm taking as an example, and I'm building an on-chain product, and I want to build those Airbnb credentials on-chain, right? And Airbnb displays each one of us, our data, like in the front-end interface, and I can take that data and generate proofs and bring it on-chain of that, and I can actually verify that, okay, this data is of Airbnb's data. Is it somewhat like that? What zkTLS, how it works?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to bring it on chain. I think, most of the exciting products that we've talked about so far, they have plans to bring more things on chain, especially with stablecoin payments and creating network effects. That makes a lot of sense down the road. But at the end of the day, what you do with that proof, it's generated locally on your device, at least with Opacity. I won't speak to other protocols, and then the user chooses what they want to do with it, right? Like, or at least you're in collaboration with the platform. You're sharing your data. So if you want to bring it on chain, absolutely. If it makes sense for your business, you should. If you don't need to, for example, for Daisy, they're just trying to verify TikTok views and engagement. There's no point for that to be on chain. It's totally fine. It's public. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to share it anyways. Everyone's sharing this all over the place. It's not private. It's not anything. You can jump that into an S3 bucket, right? And this is really the power of zkTLS for the builders who are out there thinking about this stuff. I know a lot of people are going to want to land stuff on chain, but if it makes sense, I highly encourage you to do it. You need soul-bound badges or reputation, whatever it may be. If you don't, then don't. It's hard. It's really hard to build stuff on chain. Anyone who's built anything on chain will tell you it's really fucking hard. So don't make your life harder than it needs to be. All these things, creating a great business, creating a great startup, are difficult enough. Use the tools in your toolkit the way that you see fit to build the best product that you possibly can. Because at the end of the day, that's all users really care about, aside from speculation.
I think we'll deep dive into the little bit of how Opacity does this thing in later. But I'll get started with the use case first. I think that will be, help users, like viewers and listeners, to understand more. As you know, I started our talk with the Earnify, which is, I think many people already know the name of Earnify now. There is Daisy, there is Earnofy. I'd like to start with Earnify. If you can give a very brief, like what they are, what they solve, and how they're using Opacity, zkTLS under the hood, and how the zkTLS, playing a role in their product. You can start with Earnify. That's the biggest product out there with a solid PMF. And then you can, give us a glimpse of Earnofy powered by Daisy.
Yeah, for sure. So Earnify, I love Earnify. It's a really cool story too, because it was my first conference with Hirsch. It was on stage at Deepin Summit in New York with actually Daisy and another company we work with called Nosh. And right after the talk, this young guy comes like running up to us. He goes, "Oh my God, I just realized what I can do." And that's Aaron, the founder of Earnify. And he started from the same problem. He started from this problem of how come earned wage access and payday loans are so expensive, anywhere from 300 to 600% APY, just to get $20 for groceries. Or, your car breaks down, you need to fix the brakes. You need, $100. And like, you're good for it. You've earned your wages already, right? You're an hourly worker, maybe a waiter, or, maybe, some sort of other type of service worker, janitor, whatever, right? You earn these wages. You just haven't gotten paid them yet, right? And it turns out the way that the market works today, because we don't have this portability and verifiability of data, is you need this big sales team to go talk to Walmart or go talk to Flipkart and say, hey, we have this service, we can offer it. And if your workers want their money earlier, we can facilitate that transaction. But that costs a lot of money. There's a lot of operational overhead. And, those are the interest rates you end up with, especially with fraud rates. Because, again, people will find out a way to optimize for the game, right? Like, just like an airdrop, this is not that different. So what they do sort of in the crutch is they allow people to earn access to their wages early, right? And the way they use zkTLS is basically for underwriting purposes. Because if you think about what makes someone good for a $20 loan out of their wages that they earn, you want to make sure that they actually worked, right? How many hours? You want to see what their hourly rate is, so you get an estimated sort of amount that's going to come in. You want to know exactly when they're going to get paid. Do they get paid weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, right? You want to know when that money's going to come in. And you definitely want to know if they're still employed, right? Obviously, there's other things like, their name, their location. These things help with underwriting. But really, if you've got those 4 things, you're pretty good. So they use zkTLS to plug into places like JustWorks or ADP or Rippling to verify that someone has worked some hours and that they're good for the money. And then they can give out a loan. And because of the juice and the DeFi rails and the efficiencies there, they were able to bring it down from 300% APY down to 0. They just make money off the interchange fee on the cards. So it's really a revolutionary product that just shows how some simple data point, have I worked or not, can unlock a huge amount of economic value for people who really need it. And I forgot who it was. I think it was someone at A16Z said, like, what's like PMF or like, what's what's virality, like what's your best growth engine? It's when someone uses your product and without any prompting, they're going to go tell their friends about it, right? Because it's so cool. And that's what happened with Facebook. And that's what happened with Google, right? I don't know how many users remember before Google, but it was like searching the internet was actually kind of hard. Then you use Google. It was like a magical experience. Everyone's like, oh, you still use Alta Vista? You still use Yahoo? You're insane. Like, use Google, right? It's the same thing happened with Earnify. Almost like, oh no, it was all word of mouth that got them to the #1 spot for the paid finance category on the App Store. So really proud of him. He's done incredible work. We're super close to the team and excited to see them bring more products to market that help people access their wages and people who need better finance, basically.
Yeah, I think you can, tell a little bit about how EarnOS and Daisy or some other Web2 apps or any applications who are using, Opacity and zkTLS, how are they using if you want to highlight some more use cases?
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep these a little bit briefer. Earnify is seems like, it's the one people like talking about right now, but EarnOS is great. They're the #1 app in the world store. They've signed up, I think, over 2.5 million users at this point, on their way to 3. And for them, it's very interesting. If you're crypto native, you'll look at it and it'll feel kind of like off-chain questing. But really what it is connecting brands and advertisers directly to the audience they want. So if Uber wants to, attract some people who are using Lyft right now, you could prove that you have, 10 Lyft rides in the past, month. And Uber is like, great, we know you're a really good target. We think you'll use our platform. If you just were willing to give it a shot, here's some free credits, right? It's a very simple, like, sort of, lifetime ROI of lifetime value LTV of a customer, and they can calculate the ROI on these things, and it's all very straightforward. So advertisers really like that one. Another good one I use, like if you spent $10,000 on Nikes, I bet Adidas would probably send you some free shoes to try out, right? So these interesting things start to happen when you have companies competing against each other on the basis of your own personal data. Daisy, I love Daisy so much. I love these guys. They're absolutely cracked. They're printing money. And what they do is they verify social activity to connect brands to influencers, which seems like a sort of small idea. Like, can't brands already get in touch with influencers? But because the influencers can't verify their data, there's all these things, this friction, right? Like, you have to talk to a manager, you have to sign the 6-month deal. The influencer has to spend all this time seeding all this contact, and they don't get paid till 90 days later. It's a pain in the ass. Obviously, it's a great living for some people, but it's a huge pay. So they allow influencers to basically monetize their activity, which would otherwise just sort of fall to the wayside, whether that's commenting or stitching or reposting. Obviously, they can still work out a big brand deal if they want, but it's a huge new unlock for influencers to be able to have these viral flywheel loops, because all the influencers on the platform are working together with these activations. You sort of get instant virality. So they've done really cool stuff, like they sent a song to the #3 spot on the Billboard 100, and we really know they did that because the song was going like this, and then they hit the Daisy boost, and you see it go whoop, and they got to number 50, and then they were like, let's do it again. They went whoop, and they got up to #3. So that's the bar song by Shabuzi, for anyone listening curious what that song was. But they're great. They're awesome. It's a huge time savings and friction unlock, just because users can sort of validate their own data. So you'll see more stuff from them. They were at Solana Accelerate. They announced some stablecoin stuff that's going to be happening to get closer and closer to instant payout. And you get awesome network effects of people just working together to monetize their brand. And the nice thing about that, I think, is also choice. No one's going to force you to do anything. The influencer knows the value of their own brand, right? So they're not going to do anything that they think is going to hurt their image. But if they agree with it and they like it, then pay them for a like. It's worth it.
Yeah, I think we started with what is zkTLS, then Opacity, and then the use cases and applications of the various applications which are already using Opacity. I think it's nice we can little bit go in depth of Opacity, and David, as you were telling that we can go a little bit deep about how Opacity does the job in the backend. Basically, I think as we are discussing the data, data is being brought and people are doing bunch of stuff using it. How exactly Opacity is doing so? If you can give us a glimpse through it, any architectural reference you want to do, or any analogy if you want to use to explain the mechanism of, how Opacity is functioning under the hood.
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's definitely my weakest section, but thankfully, because I'm so bad at it, people actually like my explanation because it's easy to understand compared to the researchers. At least I hope so. We'll see how it goes. You let me know in the comments if this makes sense or not. But basically the way it works is it's a notary service, right? And we all the zkTLS stuff spun out of this group from the Ethereum foundation called the TLS Notary Group. Definitely give them a follow if you're interested in this tech. They're an amazing team. There's a few different ways to do it. I'll talk about Opacity specifically. So we use what's called the MPC method, or multi-party compute. And basically what that means is there's a bunch of nodes out there. This is where EigenLayer comes in. They're incentivized to act properly because of the economic security. So shout out to EigenLayer too. And one of those nodes get randomly selected. When that node gets selected through the protocol, you'll spin up what's called a shared session. So basically a cryptographic agreement between your device, or you as the user, and one of these nodes, where you need both sides of the key to decrypt it. Think about it as a box with two locks, right? Now, the good news is the user already knows all their own data, so they don't really need to decrypt anything if they don't need to, right? But the other side just needs to know that what's happening in the box is true and accurate. So that shared session will send off the information to a backend somewhere, Twitter's backend, Uber's backend, wherever you're trying to get your own personal data from. And even though it can't see the data because it doesn't have both keys, what it can say is, oh, this data definitely came back and it wasn't tampered with, right? So now you can create this proof, and you can say, okay, I don't know, this meaning the node, I don't know, what Sayaki's Uber rating is. I don't know how much money he's got in his bank account, but I know that whatever they say is true based on my sort of notary process. And that's the very short version of sort of how it works. There's some other tricks of the trade that Opacity does. We really focus on mobile APIs, and there's some good reasons for scalability and security on that we think are really important. So, we have an app that's in beta testing right now, I guess I would say, so to let people sort of have a desktop experience that feels like a Stripe checkout, which we think is sort of the best way forward to help people be able to use Opacity anywhere. But at the end of the day, really, it's just a bunch of cryptographic math, moon math, however you want to describe it, which allows the user to say, this is my data. This is the proof as witnessed by the EigenLayer network that it's true. And now I can share that data packet somewhere else and say, hey, not only am I telling you this is correct, but I have the notary proof that it's correct as well. Earn my reward, give me my rating, give me my microloan from Earnify, whatever it may be.
Mm. Awesome. I think we already talked about the real life use cases, about the three main products, Earnify, Earnify, and Daisy, which are using the zkTLS and Opacity. Any more use cases you guys are seeing internally, or you and her, so the team is very bullish on, which is going to come, or which you can tell people, and many of this audience are devs, so they can get inspired of these ideas and they can build it themselves and solve real problems. Any such use cases if you can put forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting stuff that we've already sort of announced, which we haven't talked about yet. One really interesting one is called KYD. And what they're doing is they're verifying Ticketmaster income to give out DeFi loans to venues, which is very difficult in the past, right? To be able to prove that, like, hey, I made $1 million at my venue last year. I need, $1 million this year to spin up operations, to, create merchandise, hire staff, before the event actually happens, and I can sell the tickets. That's a hard thing to do. So because they are able to import that data out, they can offer much better terms on DeFi loans for these venues. And they're already closing like 7-figure deals. They're really great as well. They announced that Solana Accelerate. So super proud to be working with them. There's some really cool stuff on the gaming side that's coming out very soon. I was following the development in Slack today. So I guess just watch out for that one. It's going to be a huge gaming announcement that I'm super excited about. On the gaming side as well, there's some interesting things that we've been talking about. I had a tweet where I was like, you could just put World of Warcraft gold on DeFi rails with this, and then you could make composables. You could trade it with Roblox. So a guy I know from Farcaster decided to take that up. It's a company called Victory. Definitely, give them a shout if you're interested in gaming stuff, because I think they're going to be building some really cool things. There's AI on the front, of course, sort of training AIs on verified data. Agentic stuff's going to be really exciting in terms of verifying that something actually happened before you want the agent to do something else. I think that's going to be a huge narrative as AI becomes more mature and zkTLS becomes more mature.
In the sorry to interrupt you, but in the agent space, like as you mentioned, like AI agents is the big unlock of zkTLS. Can we verify the kind of inference of agents? Inference in the sense, let's say an agent pick up in data. Okay, And can we actually verify in the source where the agent has taken the data from and the entire data life cycle of it? Is it possible by zkTLS with agents? Or if that's not the case, how zkTLS is going to actually help unlock AI and agent mode?
Yeah, so one of our programmers, Ron, actually launched a Eliza plugin. I think they're working on bringing it back up. Not a lot of people ended up using it. It was sort of an exciting thing that, like, at the end of the day is not, doesn't find PMF. That happens all the time. Things that are technically interesting, but like no one wants to pay for, right? But that happens a lot. What you can do there is sort of interesting. You can sort of prove that a response came from somewhere, but because it's not deterministic, you can't necessarily prove that the answer is correct. What it is really interesting for, I think, on the agentic side, zkTLS, that is pumping in verified data that you would want the agent to act upon. So some examples of that are like, someone has signed a loan agreement. Now they could have their TradFi loan. Or, my credit score is above a certain amount. Now I want you to go apply for this credit card for me. Right? There's all sorts of things. Or, I just got paid, right? Let's go buy that pair of shoes I was thinking about that I have saved in my Amazon cart, right? There's all these things that we really want it to be verified and ensure that the money is there, the credit score is real, or whatever it may be before you have the agent go and do something. That I think is going to be really important to agentic. So I'm wrong a lot, especially because I like making bold predictions, but I think the zkTLS interest on the agentic side in particular, I think is going to be more around giving more freedom to the agent. Because the data is verified, which right now I would never let an agent actually, do some very high value transaction for me. But if I knew the data was verified, I'd be much more inclined to, have it manage my entire stock portfolio on chain or something like that, right? So there's a lot to explore. There's a lot to do. If anyone's out there building this stuff, let me know. I'm still looking for more AI friends to build things with, but it's early for everything, for sure. So for any builders out there, I'll always recommend start from the problem first, like I said, and then see if zkTLS fits in before trying to build the other way around.
Awesome. I think we discussed about zkTLS opacity use cases, how new ideas what devs and builders can build on. I like to go to the next section of our discussion. It's EigenLayer. I think EigenLayer or EigenCloud, as it is now known as, I think EigenCloud and Opacity has been great friends and great partners. And I think David, if you can highlight a little bit on the tech side. I think we are talking mostly non-dev things into this episode, but yeah, I think a little bit if you can highlight how exactly Opacity uses EigenCloud in the backend, and I think all the people of EigenCloud is very big proponent of zkTLS, like how the partnership has developed in terms of relation with them, and anything new we are going to see in the next few quarters, which is going to unlock between these two protocols, any new kind of mechanism or new partnership or any new use cases which these two, you and EigenCloud people are thinking to get things done.
Yeah, it's great. I love the Eigen guys for sure. Sriram and Hirsch are close, absolutely. For how it actually works, we can start there. I sort of explained the way that Eigen works with us already. It's important to note that there's other ways to do this. You could just set up a centralized notary service where, my name's David, I run a notary service. I will personally attest that all the information that goes through my notary is good. That's fine for some things if you want to trust the third party, but a lot of times you're just trusting a third party anyway, so you just trust the user itself. It doesn't add that much value, right? And this is part of the problem why zkS didn't have a big unlock until EigenCloud came along. And that's because this collusion issue, right? Like, what if, like, I'm saying all the value here is good, all the data is verifiable, it's all fine. And someone asks me, hey, I want to take out a $50 billion loan on my Bitcoin, right? And it's like, okay, so now what's the incentive for me? And the guy can come to me and say, hey, tell them the data is correct. We're going to get $50 billion and I'll give you 25. I'm like, great, it's correct. Move on, right? Like, you'd sort of lose the ability to scale and you lose the trust. But with Eigen, because you get the entire security of Ethereum alongside it, you can go very high, right? You can get very high throughput. You can get a lot of different use cases that still work. And that's really the crux of the relationship between us and EigenLayer. And I think everyone does it that way. There's definitely other ways to do it. And we do have all of our nodes running TE hardware so that it's an extra layer of security. We don't rely upon it, but there's no downside really. There's maybe some sweet stuff, but at the end of the day, we think security is important. But at the end, but yeah, that's basically the way Eigen works with us. As far as new and interesting things, I think zkTLS and Eigen are pretty new and exciting. I'm not sure there's new features or new examples coming on board. We both have our hands full, really getting more builders to build on top of us. It's interesting the way middleware and tech stacks work, right? Where I've actually talked to the Eigen folks, and they talked about how do you sell Opacity? When do you talk about EigenLayer? And it's fun to talk about EigenLayer because it's a really cool project. But at the end of the day, none of our developers care if it's EigenLayer or not. They care if it works, right? They care if the data is verifiable. They want to know what the security assurances are. So while it does come into play in terms of like the architecture for someone who really want to understand deep down, EigenLayer is not, a selling point itself. It's the way we built the architecture and the scalability and security that people get really excited about. So I tell EigenLayer the same thing every time. It's like, we talk about our apps. We don't talk about you. You should probably be talking about us as a success story to inspire people to sort of build new interesting things with economic security in the EigenCloud versus the other way around. So yeah, love the guys, but I think the relationship is fairly simple, and I just hope it continues the way it's been going on so far. It's been great to work with them.
As you mentioned about the devs, how a dev can get started with zkTLS? Is it the best way to go some talks of Harsh? I think there are a pretty good amount of videos of him talking about zkTLS and other things. I think let's assume a developer who is working with the protocol, or who has a decent or intermediate knowledge of Solidity, writing codes and building various smart contract apps, and he stumbled upon this podcast, or he heard about zkTLS in Twitter, and and this is a starting podcast of him, get about zkTLS, and where he should get started with zkTLS using Opacity. What will you give him the roadmap? Any particular resources and docs you want him to point out? Any talks? Any repository? We'd love to know that.
Yeah, I think it depends where you're at. If you're looking to get inspired, we've had a couple of podcasts with Nader from EigenLayer that I think are really great. One with me and Hirsch, one with me and Aaron, the founder of Earnify. So if you're looking for new ideas or how to think about it, definitely go watch some of those. Hirsch also has a talk at the archetype offices where he goes deeper into the architecture if someone really wants to dig into that. Other than that, just go to opacity.network. We have a developer portal up that you can use. I think the way we operate is much more sort of boutique and handholdy than other companies in the space. So if you run into questions or you need a new data source or something, there's a lot that let's say we don't reveal it publicly because it's sensitive or, it's not ready for production in terms of like anyone can just do whatever they want with it. And we really want people to have a great experience, not only working with Opacity, but also anyone that your users that, they trust this thing that's coming out there. So because of that, opacity.network and the developer portal is a great place to start. We have a sampled mobile app with TypeScript and a few others, I believe, so that you can sort of get a feel for what it's like to generate these proofs. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. Follow us on Twitter. I'm Dawufi, DAWUFI, everywhere. Farcaster, X, Telegram, DM's always open to try to help people out who have questions on integrating, have questions on, is this a good idea? I help a lot of people with their go-to-market strategy about positioning and finding their correct audience to test, PMF and try to get those growth flywheels going as well. So if I could be helpful, I would love to be. Definitely feel free to reach out. And yeah, good luck to everyone who decides to build on this stuff. I think it's really exciting, and there's a whole new sort of white space to build interesting things. I encourage people to be creative first, have a great idea, and then try to ship it, validate it.
Awesome. I think before you close down, David, I think one thing you mentioned about you help people positioning, GPM and all. We are a podcast, right? And we primarily talks about Eigen and tech in our podcast, in our articles, in our threads, and everything. What do you think? How we should position us? If you have 3 advices for us, how we should take things ahead.
Yeah, I think for someone like you guys, I really encourage folks to think about who they're helpful to, who they're helpful for, because there's a lot of people who just sort of like Eigen, but that's not really necessarily a great audience. For an audience to be compelled to listen and do something, you really want to be resonating with some emotional problem. So, is it developers and startups? They're going to want a certain type of Eigen content, right? Is it just fans who are token holders and want to know interesting things about the price and what it's going to be, and whether there's interesting things being built on it or not? Is it investors, people looking for projects to invest in who are related to the EigenCloud in some way or whatever it may be? They're very bullish on the space but don't know where to start. All of these folks are going to want to hear different things. They're going to want to see different guests. And when you start from that first principles of like, what's the problem I'm solving for someone, who's going to be the person who is compelled to subscribe, like, comment, get involved with the community, it's difficult because it means you end up saying no to a lot of stuff that sounds interesting. But what it creates is, a true sense of unity in the community, that everyone's sort of there for the same reason. And you'll find that the stickiness there is probably a lot stronger if you work backwards from that. So that's sort of general advice to anyone, but that's always where I start when someone asks me for, what the positioning is. I always think about how to think about it first, and then, I can help guide, but your audience better than I do. So hopefully this was entertaining to anyone listening. I hope that we got the positioning right and I said the right things to you. But yeah, that would be my advice for you.
Awesome. I think thanks, David, for joining us. I think it's been a pleasure hosting you. I think you mentioned already like your Twitter handle where people can find you out. I think zkTLS and Opacity, along with it will be always in the chart tops in crypto. It will be always trending in CT because the kind of new use cases it unlocks. I'll personally keeping a close eye in the zkTLS space, and obviously EigenCloud. We'll love to host you, maybe Harsh someday, and we can talk again about the latest updates, what's happening at Opacity.
Would love to. Thanks so much for having me out, Sayagi.
Thanks.